Well, hello everybody. I'm just trying to set up here and hopefully we'll be able to get into the picture pretty soon. And there we go. So, anyways, I wanted to start this evening with bringing you a little bit of information that we've received. And it's really important that everybody understands, what's been going on within not just this country, but worldwide. And some of the findings that we've come across in our research, even though this is really, really bad, what's happening worldwide, we do have a solution. And that's why I want to speak to you this evening about our solutions. So, anyways, I'm just trying to learn how to work my way around this Zoom thing and YouTube and whatnot. So, please forgive me. But, anyways, what I'm going to be showing you this evening is about the fact that we're snowballed with everybody accusing everybody of propaganda, of fake news, and false information on the COVID and everything else. So we have a solution where all of this can stop. And as you can see, this is the Great Canadian Political Power Shift. So, for all those who want to stand up against, you don't like what the government is doing and you want to stand up against government and, really make things happen for our children and to save this country and to keep our sovereignty. Our sovereignty is number one. And this is what they've been doing. They've been trying to remove our sovereign rights so that corporations and, the governments will be able to rule under one government, take away our natural resources and manage the entire planet is their claim. So we know from a fact, okay, since the politicians never truly gave us our rights in Canada, they say we have rights, they say we have democracy. The only ones that have legal democracy in Canada are the parliamentarians. And you've heard me say this over and over again, okay? So now we do have a solution. There's only one true legal way of getting things done in Canada or other countries. Well, the 16 countries that fell under the UK and still have the Queen. But then we also have the governments that are republics. Okay, so you have France, you have the United States, and a whole bunch of other countries where the people are the sovereigns of those countries. However, the governments took away their power through elections, through voting for a politician, okay, for the amount of time that the politician is there or the government. So this is why they're able to impose a healthcare martial law with this pandemic, that has been created. Within our findings, and everybody worldwide, they're seeing that this pandemic is not as bad as what they thought. And now they're backtracking, but they're still accusing people of propaganda and whatnot. Even the doctors who stand behind the science and their facts. So people are going to have to stop and think about what they're actually doing and who they're going to believe and all this. But in the end, does it matter what's really going on? Does it in the sense where do we need to focus on how it happened, where it happened, and all of these things? On one hand, yes, but on the other hand, when it comes to our rights in Canada as citizens and to be able to stop this government in its track before it's too late, this is our last chance, our last ditch effort to be able to get people to understand that we do have collective rights. However, in Canada, we never got them. In republics such as the United States and France, voting for political parties removes our collective rights. The only rights we have is to vote in for our next dictators. Now, do you finally understand what we've been trying to tell you for the last 11 years? I mean, we've been at this 11 years, almost 12 now. And it's amazing how, we were ahead of our time in seeing what was going on, but the people weren't there yet. So, everything was falling on deaf ears, right up to a few months ago. So now hopefully things will turn around. But I really want you to listen to this, because what I'm going to be showing you next is very, very vital, so that you understand that the doctors, worldwide are not wrong, who are saying that this is not right. We don't need, first of all, we don't need a vaccine for this. And then after that, you know, seriously, people have been healing themselves at home. If 98% of the people have contracted it or are asymptomatic and really did nothing, what is there to fear? Other than it does affect the vulnerable. So what do we need to do? Well, within the research we found, well, got to connect the dots. And now tonight, I was trying to find where here in Canada, Ottawa, was the news were advertising that, yes, they found COVID in meat. In meat. So this goes along exactly as to what, if you watch my last video and you hear about what I'm saying, we can trace back SARS, okay, the coronavirus, to using human feces for composting, putting that in on farms to grow our vegetables and our food, and then the animals are eating, stuff, the wheat with that, and the corn and everything else. So yes, it's normal that we'd find it in our food. So in our research, to make a long story short, so that we can get onto this video, in the research from around the world, what I was reading in regards to C. difficile, okay, C. difficile is the superbug, and this is what it is. It's the superbug mixed in, okay, with the flu, the SARS coronavirus, which seems to be attacking our guts. So put that together and you will get C. difficile and the flu or the common cold mixed up, or, since we already have one of the bacterias in our guts already living there, of course, we're going to show positive, and in some other people, they don't show positive at all. So when you're listening to what these gentlemen will be saying, please notice that some places are affected more than others. So where are they getting their beef? Where are they getting their chickens? Where are they getting their fish? Where are they getting their vegetables? Okay. So please listen to this. It has to do with our food. We don't need to go in a major panic, because they will tell you the cures. Okay. How they were able to cure people. One doctor says that a whole bunch of them were, telling people about end of life and getting them ready for end of life. And then after they were using, and I won't say it yet, I want to make sure that you guys are paying attention. The people were walking out of the hospitals. Okay. It's something that we've been using forever. We use that for, I was taking it about 20 years ago, well, 23 years ago for pneumonia. Okay. I lived. So anyways, I'm going to cut this short, and I'm going to let you watch this. I'm going to remove myself here, and you'll be able to, like I said, make up your own mind. But when we're looking at everything that's going on, we have to take back our power. The only way to take back our power is our collective rights, and we need to get together. We need to unite, and that's under the powershift.ca. You can sign your Citizens Convention of Consent, okay, as right here. Okay, so if you go to the powershift.ca, you can sign it in either English or like fill it out in either English or French and sign it. And at the end, you make sure you put in your email address and you'll be able to get your own copy. And then it stays within, everything gets numbered. So the convention of consent is legal. It is also protected through privacy. And you know, you can share it with others if you want. If you don't want nobody to know you've signed it, that's up to you. But these are all things that we can do now that we're stuck at home under this martial law, because we are under a martial law. They're just sugarcoating everything. But we can put everything aside, work together, never mind what they're doing, get this done, and we can bring this into court, and we have our rights, because it is our right to collectively decide our self-determination and self-governance. So in Canada, we only have self-governance, which is our government that took that, you know, away from the people back in 1982 when Trudeau conned everybody into just regenerating, you know, a new it wasn't even a new constitution, it was a combined constitution, and it still belongs to the UK. Okay. And that's why we can't remove this constitution until we remove the Queen, because the Canadian citizens are not the sovereigns. The sovereign is the Queen. She's the sole shareholder, but she passed on those rights to the Canadian government. So really the Canadian government is the sole shareholder of everything in Canada. And even if you think that the Constitution will supersede what the government does, the government has nothing to worry about, because they can take away our rights whenever, because they have final decision-making authority. That belongs to us. It has belonged to us since 1960. So please pass this along. This is a solution that everybody can do. Teenagers from 15 years old on up can sign it. And that's the only way we're going to be able to legally take back our country. And every other country can do this. Okay, so please bear with me. And now I will switch you on to the video that I want to show you. And this is a roundtable that was entitled COVID-19, How New Information Should Drive Policy. Coverages begin, okay? And they did this last week. And it's really important that people know about it, because if you listen well to the doctors, there's some little discrepancies, but it doesn't matter because of different experiences, right? So anyways, COVID-19 is highly, you know, the curable. Well, that's, you know, I can't say that it's actually curable, but it'll take care of whatever you're infected with. And because as far as I'm concerned, the only cure for SARS-CoV-2 or SARS-CoV-3, SARS-CoV-4 that they're going to come up with is by cleaning up the usage of human feces for composting or manure. Okay. So it all leads back to that. I would put my hand in fire, because it really adds up. And then I finally found a document in regards to, you know, their fears about C. difficile, the superbug. And yes, it was the true pandemic is C. difficile, but they don't want to say that because it affects most seniors' homes, well, hospitals, and then it goes into seniors' homes because the seniors ended up getting antibiotics that no longer work, or shoddy antibiotics that should be pulled off the market. And the finger goes back to pharmaceuticals. And where do they place antibiotics? In our food, in our vegetables, okay? And as well, you know, in the soil that they grow these foods into, and they give it to us. So of course, you know, however, it happens to affect more people than others. Maybe some already have the bacteria and it's fine, not too much to worry about, but others that are more sensitive will have a bigger reaction. So anyway, I will let you make up your own mind. We will bring you to this video, and I'm going to remove myself from this screen. And okay. So now we will play this video.
Hello, everybody. I want to welcome everybody to this roundtable, the first one we've ever done that's completely on the internet via video. We tested out this capability yesterday. It looks pretty slick, but I would anticipate a few hitches. But everybody, I think we can handle this if we just kind of follow the rules. And so let me quickly lay out some of the rules here. First of all, if you'll take a look at the circles on the bottom of your screen there, if you have a mouse and you get your little arrow up and going, there are two icons on the far left. There's a microphone and a video. If you're in attendance as a member or a witness, keep your video unmuted. I just muted mine, just unmuted it there. So kind of see how that works. Do not touch your audio. You are automatically, everybody's muted until it's your turn to speak. And we're doing that not to be cruel, but just because it makes an awful lot of sense in terms of being able to not have a bunch of chaos during this this roundtable. Again, because of that disruption, sensitive multiple microphones, don't touch that mute button. If you'd like to speak at another time, there is on the attendee list at the very bottom, if you take a look, it's very small, but there's a little hand. There's three little squares and a little hand. If you click on that, I'm clicking on mine right now, that will signal either the witnesses or me that you want to make a point. Certainly, I don't have a problem with witnesses doing it. I'm hoping members do it sparingly. Again, this is not going to be like a normal hearing, so not quite the same kind of free flow that we normally have. And what I would urge all the members is to direct your questions at a particular witness. Again, it's going to be pretty hard to have this wide open. So if you've got a particular question, ask it to a particular witness or possibly witnesses, but be very specific. And we are going to be very mindful of the time. I want both the senators and the witnesses to be, watching that 7-minute clock run down. The favorite technique of senators is to ask about a question that requires about a 5-minute answer right at the 6:59 mark. I don't really want to allow that. We can take those types of questions under advisement for questions for the record. So with that, Dan, if you can quick put up, I've just got 4 little charts, should really surprise nobody. But I just want to start out with some basic information, because what this hearing really is, from my standpoint, all about is, as we develop data, let's face it, when COVID, when we found out about that brand new virus, nobody ever heard about it. Pretty darn scary. You see folks in China in moon suits. And so it's that fear of the unknown that is driving so much of the policy right now. And I have not been critical of really any policymaker who's had to make very tough decisions with very limited information. But as we're gathering that data now, and that's what this hearing is all about, is we should take that new information, that new data into account in terms of how do we modify our policy, as well as what I've been advising for quite some time is we have to look at the totality of the harm being done, not only just the tragedy from a standpoint of lives lost and lives destroyed, but also the economic destruction and the human toll that is taking as well. So I've just got 4 quick slides, just some basic information to kind of try and keep everything in perspective. The first one is the one on the screen, causes of death for 2018. You notice 2.8 million Americans died that year. That's pretty typical. It's almost 8,000 people per day. I think the largest number of per day deaths for COVID is slightly over 2,000. So you can understand how significant an issue, the significant tragedy that COVID really is. Next slide. This is just the 9-year history off the CDC website of seasonal flu. I think it's important to point out the magnitude of that problem. I think the figure is only 40% of Americans get vaccinated for this. The vaccine's not 100% effective. And you can see how many Americans die on an annual basis over the last 9 years. In total, 337,000 Americans have lost their lives due to seasonal flu over the last 9 years. That's an average symptomatic case fatality rate of 0.13%. You can see, look in the past years, kind of the lowest level is about 0.1%. A really bad flu season is almost 0.18%. I think those numbers are important to keep in mind as we take a look and we eventually find out what not only the case infection rate is with COVID, but what is the actual infection fatality rate, which as the denominator grows and that infection fatality rate decreases, hopefully some of the fear will be reduced. Again, I'm not saying the fear is not irrational. It absolutely is legitimate. But in order to really regain our economy and open it back up, we do need people looking at this from a proper perspective and hopefully with an effective therapy and cure. And we're going to have Dr. Corey on to talk about some pretty hopeful signs in terms of therapies in the hospital. Hopefully we can also bring down that fear level so people can go back to a more normal type of life. But you can see 337,000 deaths over the last 9 years just due to seasonal flu. Next. This is just, and these are up-to-date figures as of this morning. So here's a state and territory comparison. Unfortunately for New York, it leads the pack in terms of number of cases, in terms of number of deaths, in terms of percent of the population that are known cases, 1.7%, percent of deaths of the population, 0.13%. The lowest percent of population in terms of cases is Hawaii and Montana at about 0.043 compared to New York's at 1.7. And in terms of percent deaths, there are a lot of states, fortunately, that are only 0.001. On average, America is about 0.36% of the population is reported as a case, and 0.02 of the population has actually died from COVID. And then the final chart, Dan, these just country comparison. I got 12 countries on here that I've been tracking pretty much on a daily basis. I'm going to throw Russia and China out in terms of actual comparisons because I'm quite honestly not sure how accurate their reporting is. But I think the other nations, and let's face it, everybody's going to have different standards on how they report these cases and how they collect information. But I think it's important to point out when you take a look at the cases as a percentage of population, the United States ranks number 3 in terms of worst. In terms of highest percentage of the population that's been infected, but we rate 7th when it comes to percentage of deaths or percent of population the deaths are at 0.02. I want to point out Sweden because Sweden definitely took a different approach to responding to COVID. They basically took the approach of we will quarantine the sick, we will protect the vulnerable, and the rest of us will basically go about our lives, obviously following the guidelines of social distancing and sanitizing, personal hygiene, that type of thing. And again, these numbers, we don't know where they'll eventually turn out, but Sweden, in the scheme of things, is not doing that badly. In terms of percentage of their population that have a confirmed case, they rate 8th at 0.26. And in terms of percent of their population that have died, they rate 6th on this list out of these 12 countries at 0.03. So again, that's just some basic information. I tried to get that to all the witnesses and senators just to have to again put all this in perspective. With that, I'll turn it over to Senator Peters, my ranking member, for his opening comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The coronavirus pandemic has certainly profoundly altered our world. It's putting millions of people out of work, threatening the future of small businesses, exposing serious inequities in our healthcare system, and is taking the lives to date of more than 71,000 Americans. And like so many of us, I'm ready to start getting America back to work. but we need a clear plan backed by science and by data. That will give us a roadmap to safely reopening our economy in stages. While cases in some parts of the country appear to be plateauing, we know that there are other communities that are experiencing rising numbers right now. We currently don't have enough tests to fully understand how many people have contracted or succumbed to the virus. We are still struggling to get enough masks, gloves, and other personal protective equipment to our frontline workers, and we don't yet have the supplies needed to prevent a resurgence of this virus. We need a robust contract tracing plan to identify possible exposure to coronavirus and prevent further spread that could result in another wave of cases, hospitalizations, and unfortunately, tragic deaths. We need to protect and grow the capacity of our hospitals to deal with these localized outbreaks, and we need to back production of life-saving drugs and medical supplies we need to take back that production from China. We need to develop and deploy a vaccine to inoculate Americans who have not contracted the virus. And we need clear data and metrics that are backed by science to tell us what is working and what is not. And we need to push to use these best practices to help our small businesses out so that they can keep their employees safe and their customers' confidence. This critical information and the lessons we have learned will help create a plan for how we can safely reopen. Without this data-driven plan, we risk undermining the progress that we have made and repeat the unbearable loss of human life and economic shock that we are currently experiencing. Despite all this hardship, I'm encouraged every day by the workers and the entrepreneurs in my home state of Michigan that are finding ways to keep their workplaces safe and, as we speak, are retooling their businesses to meet the needs of frontline responders. I've talked to many of them over the last few months, and they all are saying they need clear guidance by reliable data to back up their actions. We also must remain focused on the unequal impact of this virus and how it impacts communities of color. In Michigan, Black residents make up 13% of the population, but represent 40% of the deaths from COVID-19. This disparity is rooted in systemic inequity, and we must change our plans in response to the data and protect these communities, not simply accept the inequity of the inevitable. These decisions are a matter of life and death, and we cannot accept tens of thousands more coronavirus deaths as unavoidable. Just as we can't accept the reopening of our economy while minimizing risk isn't possible. We must have a clear path that provides people with guidelines that are backed by science to help us reopen. I look forward to today's discussion and to continuing to work with all of my colleagues to ensure that we're taking the appropriate steps necessary to allow us to safely reopen our economy while protecting our most precious resource, the American people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thanks, Senator Peters. I'd really like to thank all of our witnesses for the time you've taken out of your day just to participate in this, but also the time you've spent, first of all, speaking to these issues. I think all but one of you I've seen on some TV show in the last couple of weeks, but you've put your lives and you've done a lot of work to try and educate the public, and I truly appreciate that. The one outlier will be our first witness, Dr. Pierre Kory. I just spoke with him last week. He's affiliated with the University of Wisconsin-Madison, but he's a New Yorker, and he's currently on the front lines in New York. And the reason I wanted to put him first is to give us a little bit of hope. What he is talking about in terms of effective therapy once individuals have been hospitalized, I think is very encouraging. And I wanted to give him enough time to kind of speak to that before we kind of open up into the sort of the main purpose of what this hearing was all about, which was really taking a look at the data and taking a look at the policy choices and decisions that we've made and that we need to make based on what that information, what that data tells us and instructs us. So again, our next witness is Dr. Pierre Kory. He's the Chief of Critical Care Service and Medical Director of the Trauma and Life Support Center and Associate Professor of Medicine at the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Public Health. He is board certified in critical medicine, pulmonary diseases, and internal medicine. He previously served as director of the advanced courses sponsored by the American College of Chest Physicians. Dr. Kory received an MD at the St. George's University School of Medicine. Dr. Kory.
All right. Yeah, thank you. I believe I'm unmuted. So thanks for the invitation. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about COVID. I do want to start out by saying that I'm speaking today as part of a group. I have bonded with 5 colleagues. They're some of the most well-known and highly published and most impactful critical care experts in the world. And I do want to make sure that I mention them. So one is my colleague, Dr. Paul Marik. He's from the Eastern Virginia Medical School, very well known in our specialty. Also, Dr. Umberto Meduri, who's from the University of Tennessee in Memphis. And then also Dr. Joe Verone in Houston, and then Dr. Jose Iglesias from Hackensack. Now, the 5 of us, we came together early on in COVID, and we've been trying to figure out this disease. And I got to tell you, we came up with a protocol, and I want to talk about that protocol, but with some other issues that I think the healthcare system needs to be aware of. So first of all, let me just tell you about some of the results of our protocol. So members of our group have now treated in excess of 100 hospitalized patients with our treatment protocol. And we're going to report that nearly all survived. The 2 that died were in their 80s and had advanced chronic medical conditions. None of the patients had long stays on the ventilators, none are ventilator dependent, and most of them had short hospital stays and were discharged in general good health. And so I'm going to say that is good news. Many people are going to be skeptical and ask about that. But let me talk about a little bit more about why we are seeing that. So the first thing is I just want to say how troubled we were. I appreciate your comments, Senator Johnson, about how we're all doing the best we can with the data we have. And so it's hard to point fingers, but I have to say that we're a little bit we are dismayed by the lack of a proposal for an effective treatment protocol. There's 3 critical things that we've seen over the last month that we really want to talk about. So number one, and again, I do not want to diminish the value and the expertise of our national healthcare societies and international healthcare societies like the WHO and the CDC. However, I think those are bodies that are built for peacetime and not for war. And we're at war right now with this virus. And one of the main issues that we've seen is that they initially came out, all of the national healthcare societies came out with recommendations that focuses on supportive care only, which is generally you give Tylenol for fever, you treat symptoms, you might give a little hydration, nutrition, and you give oxygen and ventilators for support when they can't breathe. And that's reasonable for viral syndrome, but this thing is different, number one. Number two, that strategy is failing. I don't think I need to spend a lot of time showing how badly that's failing. The mortality and morbidity rates of this disease are unprecedented. I've been doing critical care for a decade and a half. I do not see mortality rates associated with any severe illness that I see in this one. Supportive care is not working. We're just trying to put a call out to the world to rethink this supportive care only strategy. So that's one major concern we've had. The second is we want to call attention to the world to what we think is a tragic error in analysis of medical data. And that is the fact that all societies from the beginning of COVID have advised against the use of corticosteroids in COVID-19. We think that is a fatal and tragic flaw. And I will tell you why. One of the members of my group, Dr. Umberto Meduri, who's probably the world expert on corticosteroid therapy in critical illness, 3 weeks ago, he published a paper along with 5 other internationally known experts. They published a paper in Critical Care Explorations, which essentially reviewed the role and impact of corticosteroid therapy in all the prior pandemics, including the coronavirus pandemics of SARS, MERS, and H1N1. And contrary to the conclusion of the reviews done by all those national societies, they showed that in the 2 largest and most carefully executed studies of all of the impacts of corticosteroid, that corticosteroids are actually life-saving in these severe viral syndromes. They showed drastic reductions in mortality in anyone who had anything beyond mild disease. You shouldn't use it early as an outpatient, but once you hit the hospital, it's life-saving. And just this week, we're starting to get even more really impressive data showing the importance of corticosteroid therapy in these syndromes. So for instance, just this week, Surin Dragici, he's the CEO of Advaita Bioinformatics. And this is fascinating stuff. And this is about as cutting edge and futuristic medicine that you can imagine. But they have this sophisticated artificial intelligence platform called iPathway Guide. And what they did is they cultured human cells and they infected them with coronavirus. And they were able to analyze the genes that were activated by the coronavirus. They were able to do this with multiple viruses. And what they saw is that in the coronavirus cell types, the amount of the types of genes that were activated they were able to match that against medicines that suppress the activation of those genes. And the one drug that they found that perfectly met the ability to counteract that gene activation was methylprednisolone, which is a corticosteroid. At the same time that they did that, Dr. Mayur Ramesh at the Henry Ford Hospital, he's an transplant infectious disease expert and immunologist, he implemented a methylprednisolone protocol. Their study just came out this week. And what they showed, and I talked to them in personal communication, is once they started using methylprednisolone, their needs for ventilators went down, their mortality went down, and they're reporting this in a study that's right now just a pre-publication, but in over 200 patients, they saw dramatic effects. He said the entire environment changed. There was less codes, less need for ventilators. Their ventilators peaked and decreased. So they came out of a mass casualty environment to a much more controlled condition. And then right now, we're also getting word that there's a paper under review from our colleagues in Spain, critical care experts, all of them, who are now reporting that when they use methylprednisolone therapy earlier and longer than in the Henry Ford study, they're showing absolutely dramatic reductions in mortality. So those mortality rates that you're seeing, we think that there's a really strong answer to that, and we need to change our treatment strategy, which was one where we did not use corticosteroids, which we think are critical, and we want to use them. You know, again, this is the standards of medical evidence have changed a little bit in this crisis, and so I'm going to use some Facebook posts, but these were posts that were posted anonymously by doctors who are in the middle of this surge, and this is what one of them posted 2 weeks ago. This is a hospitalist from Southeast Michigan. He wrote, "We floundered for 2 weeks, lots of codes, intubations, and death, maybe 15 discharges. We started steroids and discharged 250 patients. Less intubations, less codes. And the ones that ended up on a ventilator, not as serious. If they have chest x-ray or CAT scan changes, start steroids. If they are hypoxic, start steroids. If they are ambulatory and hypoxic, start steroids." This completely changed our trajectory. Steroids are a game changer. This critical efficacy is being noticed more and more around the world. We're seeing it pop up in new protocols and guidelines. Another post from a doctor in New Orleans who also got inundated in the surge, they found, he writes, "I'm here in New Orleans. Since we started using steroids, we were able to free ventilators and get elderly patients out of the hospital without needing a ventilator. Patients that were obviously crashing quickly, who we had to have end-of-life talks with, were able to walk out of the hospital. At no point did any of our patients worsen because of steroids. These patients shed viruses 4 weeks later with or without steroids. The virus doesn't kill anybody, it's the inflammation that does." You know, so those two things that I just reviewed, which is one, the fact that the supportive care only is failing. Two, the lack of steroids may be a critical absence in the treatment strategy of these patients. And then number three, the other thing that we've seen all around the world in many institutions, in medical journals and editorials, is this constant cry for randomized controlled trials or prospective trials. Listen, we in our group, we all know the critical need for data and trials, but we think there's an overemphasis, and we're forgetting some of the ethics of doing research in a pandemic when patients are dying and they're very sick. And I want to remind us of a few ethical principles that the world has agreed on. So number one, the Declaration of Geneva of the WMA, which is the World Medical Association, binds the physician with the words, "The health of my patient will be my first consideration." Number two, the International Code of Medical Ethics declares that a physician shall act in the patient's best interest when providing medical care. And then most importantly, this is where everyone's getting confused, is that this idea that what we're doing is unproven or experimental therapies. I want to call particular attention to Article 37 of the World Medical Association Declaration of Helsinki, first approved in 1964 and most recently approved in 2013. And in that Article 37, which is titled Unproven Interventions in Clinical Practice, it reads, and I paraphrase, "In the treatment of an individual patient where proven interventions do not exist, a physician may use an unproven intervention if in the physician's judgment it offers hope of saving life, reestablishing health, or alleviating suffering." You know, having said that, let me just talk about what our group did. And I'm sorry if I'm going a little bit over time, but this is what we did. So myself and Dr. Marek and Dr. Baduri and Dr. Iglesias and Dr. Verone, we got together early on, and all we did is talk COVID 24 hours a day. We exchanged emails and papers and clinical discussions. Probably my biggest contribution to Dubuque is that I am a New Yorker. I've trained with, I've been trained by, and I've trained almost every person in every ICU in New York City. And from the beginning, while I was in Madison preparing for the surge, I got to talk to them each and every day. And the accumulated clinical experiences the impressions, the responses to different treatment strategies, we all got to observe. And we convened a group and we came up with a treatment protocol. It's based on decades of our experience at taking care of patients, our research, as well as hundreds of publications. What we noticed was three things that I think people are not recognizing, is that the way that this virus is killing people and causing all these organ failures is there's three major pathologic processes that we're seeing, which is this state of extreme hyper and dysregulated inflammation. Some people are calling it a cytokine storm. That's number one. Number two, we're seeing hypercoagulability with frequent and excessive clotting. And number three, we're seeing this outsized hypoxemia, which approaches to treating that have sort of been evolving, but I think we failed in the beginning. And so based on those three processes and based on our knowledge of therapies and therapeutics, we came up with what we calling our Math Plus protocol. It's on our website. It's COVID19criticalcare.com, but I'm going to go through it really quickly. Number one, the three critical medicines is methylprednisolone. I just gave you some of the evidence and some of the rationale why that's critical. We know it worked in SARS, MERS, and H1N1. And the fact that we're not using it here, I think, is causing some of this needless death. So methylprednisolone, number one, it's a powerful anti-inflammatory drug that we use to suppress the immune system and prevent organ damage. This condition in COVID-19, which is the cytokine storm, a corticosteroid is the standard recommended treatment accepted around the world for cytokine storm. Ascorbic acid, although known as vitamin C, everyone dismisses it as a vitamin. Those of us who use it and know its physiology and its potency, it's not only a vitamin, it acts as a stress hormone in fighting off infections. It's critical and has synergistic capabilities along with steroids. And so we strongly promote that. It prevents the development of leaky blood vessels within the lung and avoids the development of lung failure. It should always be used when paired with corticosteroids. Heparin is another one. It's a blood thinner. We're seeing excessive blood clotting. Almost all centers and institutions around there have promoted the use of some amount of blood thinners. Some are more cautious than others. Some are more aggressive than others. But we all recognize the critical need. And then the last thing is what a lot of us got wrong. I'm going to say the University of Wisconsin, we didn't. I'm going to toot my own horn here, but we avoided the early intubation. Early intubation with these patients is harming them. The machine makes the disease worse. And so we should try to avoid intubating until last resort. And as we do that, we are seeing that we're able to alter the trajectory of these patients away from the ventilators, and we're seeing lives saved. So I'm just going to summarize by saying our treatment is not unique. We're starting to see it pop up in centers and protocols in countries around the world. The most recent Italian guidelines were extremely aggressive. They're mandating an overall focus on treating inflammation with tocilizumab and mandatory steroid use early on in the disease. They're saying to do it as soon as someone's oxygen level drops. And this is what I want to say. This is the last tragedy. And I know that probably what I've said is a little bit heated. I'm emotional, but this is absolutely a calamity that's going on in medicine. But I've been in New York City for 2 weeks trying to treat these patients with COVID. Either I've been inundated with patients who are chronically on the vent who are dying of end-stage fibrotic lung disease, or I'm seeing patients who are crashing into my ICU, but as opposed to a month ago where they were coming in with these mild abnormalities on chest x-ray and maybe mild abnormalities in their oxygen intake, now we're seeing floridly abnormal x-rays with very advanced disease. I'm throwing the book at them and it's not working. I have to emphasize that the timing of initiation of this therapy is critical. The world needs to know this. What happened here in New York is that initial surge caused so many terrible reports of patients being unattended to, running out of resources, not enough physicians and nurses, and now the population is scared. They're not coming to the hospital early enough. And now when they're coming, they're so far advanced that the medicines don't work as well. And so we need to get the word out that, things are better on the ground. We're definitely much more stable in the hospitals. We're much more resourced. We're regrouped. We're ready to take care of patients, but the patients have to come. If they wait at home with these symptoms, we're not going to be able to save them. And so I just want to finish by saying, finally, our group and what we've tried to do is put together an effective, sound, physiologic, and evidence-based protocol, and we've been trying to disseminate it. We've sent it. It's gone to the White House 3 times now. A month ago, it was given to a member of, I think, Kushner's team and brought it to the White House. They apparently liked it. However, they got pushback from the NIH and the CDC, who I think were cautious on the steroids. And then 2 weeks ago, Dr. Marek was interviewed by Newt Gingrich, a former speaker, Newt Gingrich, who also brought it to the White House. We still haven't heard. And then this week, our protocol and our group's efforts were published in the American Spectator, and the editor of the American Spectator also brought it to the White House. We still haven't heard anything. we do think that we need to develop a national effective treatment strategy. And with that, I think I'm just going to end there and just say we're experts in our field. This is what we do. We know how to take care of patients. Let us take care of these patients. We know that these medicines are sound. We know the safety profile. Everything in our protocol is safe. FDA approved, has been used for decades. Yes, that's off-label, but we do off-label stuff every day. And with that, I probably took too much time. I'm done. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you, Dr. Corey, for just being a doctor, for your passion. I can tell you now your protocol has been sent to the White House 4 times. I sent it to Mark Meadows today with the text that I pray somebody in the White House will pay attention to this and give it very serious attention. So again, thank you for that. Again, thank you. Our next witness is going to be Dr. David Katz. Dr. Katz is the president.
Okay, I stopped it there because I think it's because I'm doing too many shares. So I'm going to do a stop share right now and go back live. Here we go. So anyway, sorry about that, guys. The videos, I was using my other 2 cameras at the same time. So I guess one's slower than the other. Looks like I need a new PC. But anyway, the reason there. What I'm going to do is actually continue the video, but through just a regular screen share. I'm just going to make sure that it's not advanced sharing. Okay. Share at a time. There we go. Now we're going to, okay, that's okay. Screen share, advanced. Okay. I'm just going to make sure that I have the right camera here. Yeah. Okay. So there we go. I'm going to make this big and try to get you over here again so that you can see. And there I am. Okay. I'm going to get myself out of there. And we're ready to start.
President of the nonprofit True Health Initiative, CEO of Diet ID, Inc., and a board certified specialist with 30 years of experience in preventive medicine and public health, having trained and later taught at Yale University School of Medicine. Dr. Katz is the founding director of the Yale University's Yale Griffin Prevention Research Center. He received an MD from the Albert Einstein College of Medicine and master's in public health from the Yale University School of Public Health. Dr. Katz.
Senators, I greatly appreciate the privilege of addressing you, the opportunity to share my perspective. I deeply regret doing so without recourse to a professional haircut. If someone had told me I was going to be addressing a committee of the U.S. Senate and doing so sporting my hairdo from 1978, I'm not sure which of those 2 things I would have found harder to believe, but here we are. I'd like to make 5 quick points about COVID, and I'll quickly note that I'm addressing this primarily as someone schooled in epidemiology, public health, scrutinizing the global data and the data here in the U.S. But I did volunteer in New York, did several shifts in an emergency department in the Bronx. This was part of the Montefiore system, and Dr. Corey, you'll be pleased to hear everything you just mentioned was standard procedure. When I was there 2 weeks ago, it had not been the week before. Steroids were being used routinely, apixaban was being used routinely, and on it goes. So the word is getting out. Whether or not the White House got the memo, others have. So the first point, this is different diseases in different populations. So we heard about the population landing in the hospital, needing intensive care. But the global data clearly show that elderly people and people with a significant burden of prior chronic illness are at high risk of severe COVID infection, life-threatening infection. But the global data showed at the very beginning and appeared to show to this day that 98 to 99% of all cases are mild. Younger people, certainly people under 50, maybe under 60, people free of major chronic disease like heart disease, diabetes. This tends to be a relatively mild infection and may often be asymptomatic. Mr. Chairman, you showed us the data out of New York and talked about the fatality rate there. But a seroprevalence study in New York showed that maybe 20% of the population of New York City and perhaps the whole state has already had this infection. That would be 4 million people. And when the denominator swells to that degree, the percent of severe cases drops precipitously. And it's actually quite interesting that 20% is the same number we got from the Diamond Princess cruise ship. And maybe a significant portion of the population is just natively resistant to this bug. But it's different diseases in different populations. There's a high-risk group, elderly, chronically ill. There is a low-risk group, younger, generally healthy. Second point, from the start, it's been clear there were two ways for COVID-19 to hurt people, to damage health, to ruin lives. One was by infecting them, but the other basically was the unintended consequences of our interdiction efforts. If we were protecting people who didn't need to be protected from this virus because it wasn't acutely dangerous to them, then causing them to lose their livelihood, putting them in a position of food insecurity, potential poverty, was more likely to hurt them than the virus. I think a humanist, a public health person needs to look at that and say, both ways that this situation can hurt people are bad. And that leads to my third point. We really need to have one national policy objective, and it has nothing to do with trading lives against dollars. That objective is total harm minimization. We acknowledge that people can be hurt by losing their jobs, and that hurt reverberates through public health in something we call social determinants of health. Food insecurity hurts people, desperation hurts people, depression, addiction. We've seen spikes in everything from gun sales to domestic violence to suicides since the advent of this pandemic. And those are real families, those are real people. All of that warrants our attention too. And by the way, it's not clear how much of the toll of COVID in New York, in the United States, we mitigated with our interdiction efforts, because we may have closed the barn door after all the horses were out. It seems clear now that COVID was circulating in the United States before we knew about it. We have evidence to suggest from seroprevalence studies that millions and millions of people in New York and around the nation have already been infected. So a lot of what we're seeing may be what we would have seen even with significantly less draconian interdiction efforts. The other thing we want to do, of course, is restore key elements of our society, because those are crucial to services, goods, and supply chains, and ultimately become rate limiting in terms of people's health. We also need to worry about people staying away from the hospital who have other important conditions because of the fear of going where COVID is that Dr. Kory described so beautifully. And then one other critical issue that I think is often overlooked, and that is we do need an all clear. Frankly, I think about people like my parents who are 80 years old. My mother worries that she could get COVID and die because she's in the high risk group at that age. She also worries, though, if we're on an indefinite timeline waiting from a vaccine, that she could die of something else before she ever again gets to hug her grandchildren. So I do think important segments of the population are waiting on a plan back. And the most likely proximal route to an all clear is herd immunity. And that doesn't mean putting people in harm's way. It means risk stratifying the population. So we're able to say who can encounter this infection safely because they're overwhelmingly likely to have a mild bout of it, get over it, make antibodies. And it is fairly clear from the global data, we do make antibodies. We do become immune. There was some communication on that topic that I think was a bit misleading. Point number 4 is we need data to inform a risk stratified approach back to life as we knew it before, protect the vulnerable, but allow many of us who are not prone to severe infection back. And in order to inform a risk stratified approach, 2 things. First, we don't need millions of tests. We need a representative random sample. That could be 20,000 people, 30,000 people, 50,000 people. We could make it a fairly big and robust number. But as long as it traverses urban, suburban, rural, all the different zip codes, all the different age groups, all the different health status, it would be enough to extrapolate to the population of 330 million of us and tell us what we need to know. Who is at risk? Who is likely to be hospitalized? Who might need the ICU? Who's at risk of death? And for whom is the risk of COVID infection commensurate with many other risks associated just with living routinely? And I think that's a critical element. And frankly, this is something CDC does routinely. And it's the work of several days at most a week, and it doesn't require millions of test kits. And then finally, in speaking with colleagues, some of whom are joining as witnesses today, others like Dr. Mike Osterholm at the University of Minnesota, arguably the nation's greatest pandemic response expert, we do need a bracing dose of humility. Previous pandemics have fooled us. When we thought we were most of the way through the woods, we would get a second wave. We do need supplies of PPE. We do need to know we'll have hospital beds if this comes back in the fall. We need to know that the ventilators are available. So we have been forewarned. We need to be forearmed. And it is possible there will be additional waves. I'm hopeful there won't be. I'm hopeful this has actually already been quite widespread in our nation. Many people have had this and didn't even know. Many people may be natively resistant, and maybe we're well on our way to herd immunity. And Sweden is an encouraging example, but I think we could do even better than Sweden by more carefully protecting the high-risk groups and using American data to inform that effort. And then finally, there has never been a better time for a Get Healthy America campaign. The things that place people at risk for severe COVID infection are things that were taking years from lives and life from years before. Heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, obesity, these are all fixable, and they're fixable with lifestyle. We can use risk calculators to identify someone's individual risk. We can take advantage of the fixation on this condition and the acuity of concern to suddenly get people to care about those long-term risk issues, which have been a threat to people's lives, a threat to people's livelihoods, a drain on the economy, all the bad stuff associated with COVID. That was going on before, but I would encourage you to think about basically making lemonade from the lemons here. We don't just have COVID to deal with. We were especially vulnerable to a higher percentage of severe cases because the health of the nation was in peril before from chronic disease. And if we address that effectively now, we will both lower people's acute risk for COVID and create a gift that keeps on giving, a healthier America. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Katz. Our next witness is Dr. Tom Inglesby. Dr. Inglesby is the director of the Center for Health Security at the Bloomberg School of Public Health within Johns Hopkins University. Dr. Inglesby is also a professor in the Department of Environmental Health and Engineering at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Prior to that, he was chair of the Board of Scientific Counselors, Office of Public Health Preparedness and Response at the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention from 2010 to 2019. Dr. Inglesby received an MD from Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons. Dr. Inglesby.
Today, COVID-19 has done great damage to our country, firstly in terms of people sickened and lives lost, and secondly in terms of the terrible economic consequences and job loss. As a sign of the speed of its spread, as of 2 months ago on March 6th, there were 200 people diagnosed with COVID-19 in the U.S. In the absence, as of yesterday, 1.19 million Americans have been diagnosed with COVID, and more than 71,000 people have died. In the absence of social distancing, this epidemic doubles in size approximately every week. That's the data that we have up until social distancing began. In the last month, more than 200,000 new American COVID cases have been diagnosed every week. We have a national plateau of about 25 to 30,000 new cases daily. We had more than 2,000 deaths yesterday from this virus, and the great majority of U.S. deaths have occurred in the last 30 days. Yesterday, 33 U.S. states reported more than 150 new cases of COVID in their states. 17 states have daily case counts that are still on the rise. On the other hand, 10 states do have a 2-week decline in numbers, which is encouraging. And states that have had 2-week declines and meet other conditions for safe reopening could be the least risky places for initiating reopening process. States reopening without safe conditions could be at risk for a rapid acceleration of cases. Our team worked with colleagues at the American Enterprise Institute to publish a report recommending 4 conditions that should be in place before a state eases social distancing. The first is sustained reduction in cases for at least 14 days. The second is capacity for hospitals to give all patients with COVID the full standard of care. The third is the capacity to test all people with COVID-19 symptoms, whether they're mild, moderate, severe. And the fourth is capacity to conduct active monitoring and quarantine of cases and their contacts. These conditions are largely consistent with the criteria and core state preparedness capabilities in the White House guidance report called Opening Up America Again. 38% of adults in the US, or 92.6 million people, are at higher risk of serious COVID infection, given their age of 65 or older or underlying health conditions. Some have called for focusing social distancing and mitigation efforts only on this high-risk group, but there are no feasible approaches to separate off this 1/3 of American adults. Most estimates of the infected mortality rate by epidemiologists and public health organizations are that this virus causes something on the order of 0.5 to 1% infected mortality rate. If this virus transmitted widely without social distancing, and high numbers of people got sick with COVID in the same period in a given city or state, there would be the potential of overwhelming healthcare facilities, outstripping available ventilators, and or the people needed to run them. We came very close to this scenario in New York City last month. If that did happen, and there were not enough ventilators to go around for the people with COVID, the infected fatality rate, which I just noted, could go up substantially, as it appeared to do both in Wuhan and in Italy. It's very important to look at the experience of Wuhan and Lombardy and New York City in dealing with COVID. In each of them, this virus was rapidly able to go from being nearly invisible to causing a complete health crisis in a period of weeks. That pattern is absolutely nothing like influenza or any disease we have dealt with in modern times. In the time ahead, we have to find a way to cope with the severe potential public health toll and the severe economic toll of this virus in the US. Some states are in a safer position than others to cautiously start to move ahead on easing social distancing. Any state that does should recognize that COVID could rebound sharply in the time that follows easing social distancing. And those states should track hospitalization rates, ICU bed rates, ventilator rates, and deaths very carefully and be prepared to change course if numbers substantially worsen. And leaders in those states should communicate clearly to the public that individual physical distancing measures, distancing between people, cloth mask use in public, avoiding gatherings, will all remain critically important throughout this entire period until we have a vaccine. Keeping the epidemic from rebounding and causing new waves will take collective great action on the part of the American public. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Inglesby. Our next witness is Mr. Avik Roy. Mr. Roy is the president of Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity, a think tank focused on expanding economic opportunity for those who least have it. From 2011 to 2016, Mr. Roy was a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute for Policy Research. Prior to that, Mr. Roy was a financial analyst and portfolio manager at several investment firms. Mr. Roy writes for Forbes and has advised numerous candidates for public office on healthcare policy. Mr. Roy is educated at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Yale University School of Medicine. Mr. Roy.
Okay, I'd like to stop it right there because you just heard the propaganda, the last gentleman, and the next one coming on is actually, I'm going to do this, stop share. Okay, so the next one is actually works for Forbes. Hello. The last one works for John Hopkins. John Hopkins, they're the ones that did Event 201. Works for Bill Gates. So, it really freaks me out that these people, where's the common sense, right? So, I don't know. You be the judge. So for me, it's like, I'm not even sure if you guys can see me now. Hang on here. I'm going to go here and check this out. Okay. Nope, not that one. Okay, because after that, I want to show you something about C. difficile. And this is what they're trying to hide. Okay, don't need that. Channel. I just want to make sure. I want to see what your questions are. Let's go here. Okay, bear with me for a second. Everything is super slow. I just want to make sure that the screen is all right and not laggy like it was. So, okay. Now, it's not letting me get to the video. Okay, so I'm gonna have to go here and find it somewhere else. Okay. Haha. But anyways, it's beyond belief what they're doing and how they're ready with the propaganda about, oh, you know, no, this is a really serious virus and it's going to kill more people. And I mean, now they've got doctors fighting amongst each other, people who have degrees, but what's happening here? They're using profits over health, and that's the bottom line. So, you know, how much of their souls have these people just sold? So it just irks me to see that these people would stoop so low for the sake of money and putting people at risk and making this hoopla out of something that is highly curable. If you've listened to the doctors, what did they use? Did you notice what they used? Steroids. Okay, simple steroids. And that just freaks me out. And that's why I want to show you this tonight. And I'm still looking for myself here somewhere. Okay. Just so that I can try to see what you are saying to me or asking of me. Just want to make sure there's questions, and it's okay if there's not that many people there because I want to get this video out. And unfortunately, it's kind of a mess. Okay. Now, I was sure I shared it on Facebook here. Yes, there we go. Now I'll be able to see yous. Okay. And hopefully interact. Facebook here. Yep. Yes, there we go. Now I'll be able to see yous. There we go. Okay. I'm seeing the chat here. Hello, April. There we go. Mark. And thanks again, Mark. We don't have one for the United States, but it's coming. Okay. Now, hi, Covey, and thanks for the compliments. But anyways, what I'm going to do now is I want to show you something here. C. difficile. This is from Harvard, okay? And the reason why I keep going back to C. difficile, it's because it is exactly, I think, what they're trying to hide. And that is a big blunder on the parts of the pharmaceuticals to begin with, who have gotten people sick. They have destroyed people's immune system. They have injected antibiotics into people, into our food, into our animals, and whatnot. So, you know, and all of a sudden, there was only so many infected. And now, well, if you test everybody, everybody's going to probably come up with either some kind of immunity to it, or depending on what they've been eating, where they've been living, they might not get it. And if you heard this gentleman, there are 3 countries where, you know, that hasn't happened. Why is that? Some countries do not use human feces for manure. And if you look at, I had the link there for, I'm going to show you the link for McGill University. I've put that in my presentation. I'm doing this presentation, and I've got all of the studies that link human feces in our manure and growing our foods, that is linked to almost, well, where does E. coli come from? And then you add C. difficile. These are all reasons why you need toilet paper. And, you know, if it can be fixed with steroids, well, hey, they just found out something new. So to eliminate C. difficile and all of the SARS coronaviruses, they are linked to exactly when we started using the human feces. All of a sudden, they started in 2000. All of a sudden, 2003, what do we have? SARS. In McGill University is pushing the use of human feces. They're talking about, a question was asked about China, and the fact that their garlic is grown in human feces, and it's also rinsed off with urine. And McGill University makes nothing of that. Oh, just rinse them and they're good. It's all healthy for you. Well, if somebody is not following the guidelines, somebody's screwing up somewhere. And from the research that I've done, they've screwed up in a lot of countries. It's sickening when you actually say poop for profit. Yeah, here we go. Canada, again, #1 leader for the New World Order, in bed with Bill Gates in getting latrines for people in other countries so that they can put poop to grow foods to sell back to us and get us sick. So this is why I'm doing this. I mean, it's totally ludicrous. And I hope that these doctors see this and start connecting the dots to human feces in our gardens. Human feces, when you're buying a bag of manure or, you know, how can I say, plant, earth for potting plants. A gentleman in Australia died for the first time. You know, he's always used his hands to, and I'll get you that link, but this gentleman always used his hands to pot his plants, and then he got an infection and died in the hospital. So what contributed to that? C. difficile as well when he went to the hospital. So combine all of these things together, we're killing ourselves virtually because pharmaceuticals have produced bad antibiotics. They've taken some off the market. They had tons of recalls on all kinds of antibiotics. They've taken some off the shelves. So, and then what happened is, in Canada, if you look at Quebec, and I've said this the other night, Quebec went hog wild in all of these infections because of privatizing seniors' homes. And then the hospitals were just inundated with C. difficile cases. Why? Overprescription of antibiotics. They're killing everybody's gut flora with antibiotics. So it's the only thing that right now could help save us is to make sure everybody takes their probiotics. Okay, probiotics. Very important because that's what they give them. And now if they can, you know, if you really get a bad case, the people, did you hear that? When the elder came in and the doctors had to speak to them about the end of life care, try to get them to make decisions. And then they gave them steroids and they walked right out of the hospital. Okay, so hopefully what happens with C. difficile, it comes in many waves. What are they saying that COVID is going to come into? Many waves. Okay, so they need to stop the bullshit right now. The doctors need to get serious here and start telling the truth and stop conning everybody and stop selling their souls. And that's everybody in the medical, how can I say, the medical field and anybody who's in the sciences. They need to speak up. They need to stop believing every little thing they read. They need to really dig, because it's only by digging that you're going to find something out. And this is why when I started working on a hospital project, I had it all planned and finalized in 2007, and then I find out about H1N1, my whole world was turned around. Everything went haywire, and then I had to stop everything because I knew that they were putting people in danger with this C. difficile and infections in the hospital. So anyways, I went on a rant again. I'm going to do a screen share here because you really need to see this. You really, really need to see this. Okay. Oh, exit full screen. I'm on full screen again. Screen share. Okay. Now, let's go to full screen. Okay. Not there. There we go. Okay. Where did it go? Okay, I hope you guys can all see this. I'm just going to make sure that I am on the right page, and you're going to see, I'm going to see myself. Okay, there we go. And there we're back. So this is from Harvard Health Publishing, Harvard Medical School, C. difficile. Okay, an urgent threat. And this is what, excuse me, this is what I was saying, that, you know, they're using this thing here. There we go. You can still see me now. And I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller there. So anyways, when you're looking at C. difficile, the World Health Organization has been inundated, and all of the hospitals worldwide have this, and in China too. But in China, they've got 7 mounds of human poop that they can't get rid of, and it would cost them $66 billion to clean it up. And they don't care, okay? But they're saying, well, we've been using human poop for manure and growing stuff for over 200 years. Well, excuse me, maybe that worked 200 years ago, but until the Industrial Revolution happened, and the antibiotics and the vaccines, I'm sorry, but you're not going to get the same results you got 200 years ago. It's stupidity, it's ignorance, and it's dangerous. I mean, I've read enough, you know, to have poop up to here with the bullshit that these governments are giving people, and then people are just regurgitating what the government is saying, and then I mean, it's crazy. I feel like I'm on the freaking Twilight Zone, and please get me off this. You know, I mean, and again, I'll say it again. I wanted to be dead before this happened, because if people don't smarten up, and thank goodness for 2 doctors who dared stand up. Mind you, they got attacked, and they're going to keep getting attacked, and as well as with the other ones coming into this, they're going to keep getting attacked. And now we've got one hospital too in California that, you know, the medical doctors, one of the doctors was speaking. He said he's representing thousands of doctors standing up to the United States government and this COVID BS. So what is COVID, really? What is COVID? So anyway, you know, SARS-CoV-2 is the virus. COVID is what, a code name? Think about it. For what they're doing and trying to enslave all of humanity. Well, like I said, we have a solution. You sign your Citizens Convention of Consent. We can do one for every country, but we need the people to get on board, because we can't do this alone. We need everybody to participate in this, and every country in the world can do it. And I know that there's a project going on in Europe right now, the EU. They're saying, oh, the citizens are taking back their countries, well, the EU. And it's a crock, because if you really look and you start looking deep, these people who are organizing this, the elite, okay, Forbes you know, Forbes. I mean, this guy's going to come and talk, you know, about COVID, who works for Forbes. That's the elite, the top 500. So who are they getting paid for? I read a document about, you know, from Forbes saying that the doctors are saying propaganda. Hello? Again, common sense here, people. So while they're going to be fighting all together and maybe bringing us into a war, what I've been seeing is that, yes, they want to bring us into a war, attack China, blame China. But everything, when you look at everything, and when you're looking at these people who are saying in Europe that the citizens are going to take back the EU, and you can see that the amount of money and the organization that took to do what they're doing, that this is not grassroots led. Grassroots people like us don't have money, okay? We're struggling. We're trying to get the message across, but we keep being tapped on by the elite and their minions and the people regurgitating their BS all the time. I mean, it's totally sickening. I was ready to give things up, like to say to hell with this, until those 2 doctors showed back up, because I seriously wanted to be dead before I saw this happening. And I thought, okay, nobody wants to listen, well, to hell with them all. They don't want to hear about a solution, screw them. That's what they deserve. They deserve everything they get. So when people refuse to study, to read, you give them the proof and that they're still there arguing with you, it's totally sickening. So when we're looking at what's happening here, like in the EU, they're going to be coming out with open government, okay, people? Open government. What does open government mean? And who is behind the open government? Where does every country have to report to? The USA. And I can prove it. And then who do we have behind this? The World Bank funding all this. The world bankers who control the USA. Yes, Mr. Trump playing his cards. But you know, how does propaganda work? You get 2 teams to separate everybody, but they all work for the same group. Okay? So don't come and argue with me about, oh, Forbes said this, or they said that, or Trump is this. No, they're all bullshitters. And this is why Trump is there, because he's one of the biggest ones alive. And I don't care if people don't like Trump. He's right now, what is he doing to you? Sending people to put you in your homes, but then he'll say, oh, well, you know, you can take this and we don't need to do that. And why? So that you will follow his route. We're like a bunch of rats in a maze, and they're standing on each side for globalization. Which way they're gonna go? And you know, when you look at the history and you look at the information and you connect the dots, you can see the lies, the manipulation, and how we fall for it. And that's how stupid we are. Yes, we are that stupid. When we're voting in for our next dictators and think, oh, we're free, but oh, we've got human rights, but the government can take it away at any time. Anybody in Canada thinking that we have human rights right now and wants to go to court and say, hey, we have, you know, the Constitution, that's our human rights, and read the fine print. If you can't read past the fine print, and if you're a lawyer saying this kind of shit, you should be ashamed of yourself. So anyway, I'm so pissed off. But I need to try and laugh about this because we do have a solution. It is viable. It's what would make the meek inherit the earth. This is it, people. You stand up for your rights, never mind all the crap going on around, sign your Citizens Convention of Consent, at least do that and help us spread the word. Because it's that, you know, to believe politicians, how many years, we've had 150 years of BS in Canada. The Indigenous nations have been listening to the same kind of stuff for 500 years. When are people going to learn? So seriously, we need to get together with the Indigenous nations. They're the true sovereigns still before they lose all their rights. And right now they're losing their rights because in Canada, the government gets to call the shots because the Canadian government is the trustee for the Indigenous nations. Yet they've separated all the nations to the point they don't even talk together. And then they've got these fake band councils as arms of the Canadian government saying, oh, they're the real natives, they're the real people, you know, who are making the deals. The government actually placed people who sold out their own people, including Jody Raybould and everybody at AFN, who are a bunch of hypocrites using words and twist them around to make people think they're so caring and so loving. And you'll see this propaganda over and over again, but people can't even have an open mind. So if you want to save your country and protect your children, you better have an open mind. You better be willing to start and educate yourself, because the government is right when they say Canadians can't make decisions. Why? Because we can't even listen for 5 minutes. We got to argue and prove our points. And, you know, I've said this 1,000 times before. This is your last chance. Your last chance to make this work. The last chance to save your country. Because you know what? I see a lot of this going on and we're going to take down that government. 40 show up at Parliament. Seriously? And who's going to really get, who's going to be able to afford to go to Parliament? Yeah. Okay. I'd like to see what people actually try to do and see if they actually come through with it, because we've heard a lot of things over the years. The only ones that are going to save your ass is yourself. We need to take responsibility. We each Canadian citizen and Indigenous person in Canada has an investment in this country. That sole ownership of the Crown of Canada Inc. belongs to we the people. And until we take our rights legally as a collective together, not different groups all over the friggin' place, okay? Different groups is good when you're handling different things. But right now, we got to show up as one under one roof, under one thing that legally can get us out of this mess, and where the laws actually work for us, okay? So you need to know the laws. You can't just go ahead and say, okay, well, I'm going to make my own convention and I'm going to get everybody to sign. This is not a petition, people. This is a political power shift. It is serious. It is not a game. It's not a petition. It's a legally binding contract. It has to be a political move. A political move means this is your business. And this is why the Canadian government is so sure that even with the Constitution, you can't touch them. They've got immunity. The provinces gave up all their rights a long time ago. I still hear lawyers saying, oh, the Charlotte, not the Charlottetown Accord, but the, oh, jeepers, I wish Rhonda was here. Pardon, Dennis?
Mitch Accord.
No, the Meech Lake Accord. Yes, thank you. That was Dennis. But anyways, the Meech Lake Accord actually happened behind closed doors. But how many lawyers will regurgitate, even constitutional lawyers? Meech Lake never happened. Not for the people, no, but it did for the parliamentarians. Well, actually, for the government and the heads of the provinces. So I'm going to come back here. See what happens when I get excited. Okay, C. difficile, an urgent threat. So C. difficile is the most common cause of diarrhea among hospitalized patients and the most commonly reported bacteria causing infections in hospitals. In a 2019 report, the CDC referred to C. difficile as an urgent threat. There's your COVID, people. Okay. Who is most at risk? C. difficile occurs more commonly following antibiotic therapy or hospitalization, and among older adults or patients with weakened immune responses. In 2002, an epidemic strain of C. diff emerged. Imagine that. That could not be SARS. Another word for SARS. Okay, causing more severe disease with inflammation of the colon, colitis, and an increase in deaths. This strain adheres better to the intestines and produces more toxin, which is responsible for causing illness and illness. Non-epidemic strains may cause less severe disease. There's 15,000 strains since 2002 of C. diff. Okay. Well, actually, it started way before that, but they only identified in 2002 as C. difficile, the superbug. It's a superbug. Okay, and how do you get it? Okay, what makes C. diff so difficult to treat? A high relapse rate poses challenges to treating people with CDI. Reoccurrence of diarrhea following initial treatment occurs in about 20% of cases. The risk of yet another relapse is even greater in the weeks following treatment for the recurrent CDI. C. diff produces spores, dormant cells capable of surviving harsh conditions for prolonged periods that can contaminate the environment. Oh, how can a little bacteria contaminate the environment, people, and food, animals? There you go. Spores are hardy and resistant to routine cleaning, but enhanced protective measures, careful hand washing, isolation precautions for infected patients, private room gown and gloves, and cleaning with agents capable of killing C. difficile spores are effective ways to prevent transmission and control of CDI. The thing is even when they give them an antibiotic that works, it comes back. So many times that now they've actually get people to donate good poop, healthy poop, so that the people can either ingest this poop in pills, okay? Nothing too gross. Like, I mean, it's gross enough just to think about it, eating somebody else's poop. I mean, swallowing somebody else's poop, but it actually cures it. Okay, that's serious. And that's, and then they can do it surgically. Okay. So, I mean, there is hope, people. Okay. The only thing that there's no hope for is our governments. So we need to become in charge as the official final decision makers of our countries, as it should be, and as legally it's supposed to be. And we can change our minds as many times as we want together to switch things around. Politics, who said politics had to be this way? The elite did. The elite did. Okay? Politicians. So if you really want to change things and stop this from happening, we need to get rid of politicians, political parties, and only hire or vote people in without final decision-making authority, okay, to a certain level. They'll still need to have some authority on different things. But when it comes to stuff like this, we need to be part of the game, okay? We need to be the final word. Because freedom, voting for politicians, you'll never get your freedom. They will always have the final word over you. Same with what they're doing in Europe. As long as you're backing political parties or the system itself, the problem is the system itself, because they've guaranteed that we can't even sue them. So anybody out there wasting their time, good luck with that. Okay? Legally, it's solid. They are solid. And unless we get together, at least 51% of the people in each country, or at least 51% of the voters, we're going to lose this battle. Why? Because even in our countries, when we were doing all the research, or I was doing the reading in this research, what I saw was that they are going to be using military from other countries to come in our countries to make sure that we do get vaccinated and that we do have our little passport, because all of this was for globalization, for them to take all the natural resources from the people in every country, taking away our sovereignty. And as Walter Cronkite said, come hell or high water, if he has to sleep with the devil, by God, we're going to have our new world order. Okay? I used to respect that man. I no longer do. I have a video where he says these things and it sounds so good. Oh, we're going to stop, wars and all this. No. That's the whole point, is for a small group to rule and to force things down our throats until they get what they want. Okay. And then I'll show you that again. But I'm going to put up these links, and I'm going to also put up the report from the CDC I mean, yeah, from the CDC, and you'll be able to see for yourselves. But what we're going to do is I'm going to do a series of these tonight. I just want to explain. So we're going to start the series in a normal way, where we're only going to talk about one thing, and then the next night we're going to talk about something else. But I wanted to, because this is so important and it has to go fast enough. I want to make sure that I can explain this a little bit so that you can see the correlation between the propaganda that's going on, even in that committee, and the doctors are not being listened to by the president of the United States and every premier or prime minister, on this planet, and all the other presidents. So who's leading the show? Certainly not the people. If the people want their rights and the people say, hey, you can't do this, yeah, they can. Under healthcare martial law, you're damn straight they can. And legally they'll win. Okay. So this is one of the things I want to show you. And then now I want to go again to their matrix. Okay. We didn't get much of a chance to discuss this directly like this here, but if we're looking at this, here you see global governance. That's okay. So now, because I want to talk about propaganda, okay, the BS going around and having everybody argue with each other, and why it's so important to just go and sign your Citizen Convention of Consent. This is why the power shift is this is what the power shift is all about, and why it's so important. Because they've prepared for years and years. They've got hundreds of thousands of people working for them in this agenda for decades. Decades, people. Okay. First time I heard about the New World Order came out of George Bush Sr. when he was running. And then if we look at Mackenzie King, that whole thing back in the 1920s to 1930s, on how they were going to rule this country and pretend that we were free so that the corporations can take what they want and steal this from the indigenous nations. Because if we'd be free, the indigenous nations had the power to come back to the table. And the Canadian people and the French people as a distinct society, because they were here before the English got here. Ever wonder what Aboriginal means? Back then, they've switched, they play on words and they switch the definitions from century to century. And this is what we've seen. So anyways, I want to show you anti-globalism. This is for them to fight the propaganda. The people at Forbes, they've got minions doing their work. Why? They need a salary. Don't trust your neighbor. I now question everything. Trust nobody. Trust nobody, not even me. Go and read for yourself. Open your eyes, keep an open mind. Don't shut everything off and say, oh no, that's that. Because what? It's people with a closed mind who believe the propaganda that the governments have created, and the elite and the scholars. Yes, the scholars. McGill University, #1. And then who wrote the laws for the International Crimes Court? Who launched the PPPs? And now they've got the PPPs for us too. Okay, I was watching one of the videos. So what we're going to do is tomorrow night, we're going to start off with a series. We're going to stick to one subject. I'm not going to be all over the place like I am tonight, but this is more for your information. So tell your friends about it. And then we're going to be going down some of the videos pertaining to, let's say, strategic intelligence, and then what I found in the presentation, and so that you can make up your own mind and have links to go and follow and read and get educated, because we need an educated population. Okay, we really need an educated population. And when I was told by the what was her name, Dennis, again? Carolyn Bennett. Carolyn Bennett told me that, Canadians aren't intelligent, aren't capable. She didn't say intelligent enough. She said, are not capable of making such decisions like we have to make. And you know what? I'd have to agree with her. I didn't agree with her then, but now from what I'm seeing, how the people are, how ignorant they are. They, you know, I've seen people on this, you know, in some of the videos, attack people who are actually taking a stand and going out anyways, because it's mild, people. I can show you 50 videos where all of these scholars, these, you know, scientists are dumbfounded by what's going on. So anyways, this year, anti-globalism, you'll see all of the tentacles, okay? Look at this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through, like tomorrow night, we're going to go through all of these, okay? Because you have to, first of all, you have to be aware of the propaganda, okay? So when we're looking at this, this is important. And then to see which countries, okay? So, and you know, what's relative to COVID-19, the propaganda that they're using there as well. So anyways, this is how we're going to be doing things. So we're going to really organize, and hopefully you'll be able to see exactly what we're doing and how, you know, how we're going to set this up. So anyways, you can go to intelligence.weforum.org, and this is where you're going to find this information. And right now, whoever wants to go to it, please go to it. And actually here with COVID, I'm going to go back here because I want to go back to the, okay, this is everything that's under COVID, okay? So now we're going to go back here, I think. Hopefully I can get back there. There we go. Okay, anti-globalism. I want you to listen again to what the gentleman was saying the other day.
Here's Thomas Hale from the University of Oxford, describing some of the key issues associated with the topic of global governance.
We need global governance more than ever. In a world of deepening interdependence, global issues are the daily bread and butter of what governments are trying to deliver for citizens. We can't have peace or prosperity, live good lives, unless we're dealing with things like climate change or pandemic disease or global financial crises. But the tools we use to manage these kind of global issues, to manage our interdependence, are increasingly gridlocked. If we think about the global trade system, we haven't had a new trade deal at the multilateral level for about 20 years. If we look at the Middle East, we see uncontrollable wars spiraling out of control without any kind of collective security apparatus to prevent them from slipping over into other issue areas. And related, we see, for example, a global migration crisis where people are moving in search of a better life, in search of human dignity, and not being able to be cared for by a global system that's under incredible strain. For all of these reasons, we need a strong global governance system to help manage our common challenges and deliver the real needs citizens are clamoring for. But unfortunately, we actually see a backlash against global governance. And actually, these two things are linked. In fact, the very failure to manage globalization, to manage global issues, creates conditions under which nationalist or populist movements come to power. Now, those leaders are in many ways articulating legitimate grievances, people who have been hurt by the financial crisis in 2008, for example, or who are struggling to adjust to new realities, are right to stand up and demand some sort of collective solution. But unfortunately, they're increasingly demanding solutions that are not constructive to solving the problem, but instead undermining the ability of governments to cooperate across borders to resolve the problems that it gave rise to the backlash in the first place. And so we see a self-reinforcing cycle of gridlock, where a failure to manage globalization and manage global governance well leads to more reactions against globalization that make the problem even harder to solve. So that's the bad picture. But there's actually a lot of, precisely because this crisis is so severe, there's actually a lot of interesting positive steps and trends underway as well. So if we think about the new actors in the system, there's actually some cause for hope. We've seen rising multipolarity as a cause of some gridlock, but actually some of the emerging economies are coming up with new ideas, new solutions to how to strengthen and change global governance for the better. And that's an interesting domain to look at going forward. We also see new kinds of actors coming to the system. Cities cities, businesses, civil society groups, we're all taking a more active role, not just in being part of the global system, but actually in developing global governance tools through more pluralistic institutions. These transnational actors are a big part of the innovations we see. So the global governance map tries to articulate some of these challenges, but also the solutions, with the hope of helping us have a more sophisticated and advanced conversation about how we can collectively work toward bigger solutions.
Aye, aye, aye. Okay. So now I'm back. But anyways, we're going to be going into this global governance issue and to show you the propaganda, because they've already established open government. I mean, the world government has already been established since 2017. Open government was officially launched last summer. And it all trickles back down to the United States. So the United States people will have a hell of a job to do. And we need to hurry up and get things done before all this propaganda gets us into a, not a fake war, but creates a war. Because if you look at everything in history, this is our next step. War is the next step because of this propaganda. They did it with World War II. They did it with World War I. Okay. So anyway, I will say goodnight, and I hope to, I'm going to get some stuff ready tonight and tomorrow morning so that we can start doing these at 8 p.m. every evening. For a while, we're going to have segment 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And, we're going to go down the most important parts of this matrix, globalization matrix. And then I'm going to show you the presentation that I have. And, the thing is we're all responsible. We all have a job to do. There's not one single person that can get away with doing nothing. Okay. So it's really about us, about the actions we take. So now it's time for action. Okay. So if we don't do it now, and we're going to be too late. Okay. So with all this, though, if it wasn't for this COVID, in a sense, and what they're doing, the people wouldn't be waking up. We wouldn't be finding out about the contaminated food. So now Ottawa, it was on the news tonight. Oh, they found COVID in the food. Well, yeah, Sherlock, hello. So, but there's nothing really to be that worried about. The problem with C. difficile is that, the ones with the heavy cases, caseloads comes from the hospitals and the nursing homes. So now if we know how we can treat the seniors and handle things in hospitals, like this gentleman was saying, COVID was cured by steroids. So anyway, that really made my night, and that's why I wanted to show it to you. And unfortunately, it was kind of sloppy there, like it was too slow. But I'm trying to, learn how to use 2 cameras. I guess my computer can't handle that, or Zoom can't handle it in that sense. So I don't know why. It was nice here on my computer, real nice and clear and not a problem. And then I just about had a heart attack when I saw what you guys were seeing. So anyways, thank you for asking the questions, and I'll try and respond to more questions, as we go. But again, so I'm hoping that I'll be able to see you here tomorrow evening, 8 p.m. Okay. And hopefully I'm not going to do the double screen, the double screen again. We're going to do it the normal way, where I'm most comfortable, and until I learn more how to do it. So anyways, thank you, everybody, and stay strong. And yeah, we have a solution. So, that's what we need to talk about, solutions, and not the propaganda. We shouldn't waste our time on that. We just need to get the ball rolling, okay, and take action. Thank you. Good night, and we'll see you tomorrow evening, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Bye-bye. Okay, now I can't even shut myself off of this. Exit full screen. Good night.